Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and today we are going to try and get this thing running. So I've got a few parts here that just arrived, and I'm going to go ahead and explain them to you, what they're for, and hopefully we can get this thing on the road today. That is the goal, so we'll see. Like I mentioned, here are the parts that we have. So this downpipe was already on the car. I just had it welded by Dave. So I had a little straight added to it to get it out of the engine bay a little more because it was just dumping right on this mess of wires, which is not a good idea. So we have that, and it's going to go down past the wastegate, which will be nice. So we'll have that out of the engine bay. Second thing, brake lines. I think I mentioned these already, but these are nice braided lines that are going to run from the master over here, which then goes all the way back to the ABS and then comes around and comes all the way back up. But we got to get those bled today. That's going to be one of the biggest things. And then here, I also mentioned this in the past video, but this is just a distribution block. Now this is the ring connector type, and that's going to replace that mess right there. And I'll have everything with a nice tight ring connector, and I'll be confident in that versus what I have now. So to start off, we're going to go ahead and get those brake lines installed and possibly get the brakes bled first. I'm not entirely sure the order of things I'm going to do because we have a few things to do inside the car, which I'll go ahead and show you. So currently, as far as gauges go, none of our gauges work at all. So fuel gauge doesn't work. I need to figure that out. I'm not too worried about that. Speedometer does work actually, so that's good. That's the speedometer. Our tachometer does not work. We need to go ahead and get that wired up. And our coolant temp does not work right now. So hopefully by the end of this, we'll have 3 working gauges, and we need to get that one fixed at some point, but yeah, we'll have these 3 and those 3. So that's on the list today as well. Hopefully we can get that done. And also, if you can see, I am already sweating so bad. It is like 90 degrees in here, and it's humid as well. It's just horrible. So very fun out here today. Hopefully you appreciate the content because this sucks right now. Okay, everything is officially back on. We have our brake lines that go there, and they're routed back behind. We have our downpipe back on, which gets it down past a lot of the wiring there. We have our O2 sensor back on. And then over here, here's the other side of the brake lines. So they are running down below, up over top the steering rack or the steering column, and they're tied down, which I don't know how well you can see that. They're tied down right there so they won't go down and rub on that. And then they go behind there. So now that that's done, we obviously need to add some brake fluid and bleed the brakes. And then on top of that, we need to get our gauges working. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and tackle that real quick. That is a freaking mess. I don't even want to look at it. But we are one step closer to driving this thing very, very soon. So I just realized that I don't have my laptop here with me to go ahead and fire this thing up, which I don't necessarily need it, but I'd like to have it. It displays everything as far as data logging and all that. So I'd like to have that before I drive it or start it again. So I'm probably gonna wait until tomorrow to drive this thing. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and while I'm covered in sweat and disgusting, I'm gonna go ahead and bleed the brakes. So we get that done tonight, then all we have to do is figure out the gauges tomorrow and then it'll drive. So yeah, hopefully we can get that done. Okay, realization number like 500 now. I don't have brake fluid. I forgot to buy brake fluid, so you can't really bleed your brakes without a lot of brake fluid. So in that case, I'm probably gonna go home for the day because I am disgusting and I'm tired. So tomorrow, I'm going to stop and I'm gonna get brake fluid and we will bleed the brakes tomorrow. And also tonight, I'm gonna do some research and figure out how to get those gauges working. I believe I know how to do it, but I need a refresher for sure. So I'll research that tonight. I'll remember the laptop tomorrow. And then on top of that, power steering needs to go together as well. So we need to bleed the power steering. So lots of things to do that I completely forgot about, but it's all right. That's what happens with cars. So yeah, that's it for today. Okay, in order to get our coolant temp sensor to work, which is the far gauge over there, which tells you your engine temperature, I have this wire that runs all the way over there. And I know this is this wire because I've already done this before and I had it working before. But I had to use that wire to the ECU so the ECU knows the coolant temp. So I'm gonna go ahead and splice into that wire, which is this guy right here, if I can find it with my finger, which is this guy right here, which I'll go ahead and throw an image on the screen of the pin out. But it is pin 4 on the black connector. So if we look, we got 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So this is our coolant temp. And we're gonna go ahead and splice this with this wire. And then we'll go ahead and turn on the car and make sure the gauge works. And then if that's the case, that's nice and easy. We'll go ahead and get that done right now. Okay, so if we go ahead and put our key in, theoretically, this gauge should turn up. And it does not, so cool. Okay, so the car officially moved. We had to move it in order to get the jack underneath the car. It was a whole issue. Okay, so I was going around and I was bleeding the brakes. Now, in order to do that, you have to take the wheels off on this car. So I got the first 3 done easy, and then the 4th one, the tire was flat, and combine that with the gravel, I literally could not get my low profile jack. I literally could not get the jack under it. So I had to pump up the tire, and then we had to move the car forwards in order to get underneath of it to bleed the brakes. It's the next day, but I have some goodies to put on the car right now. So I finally found window switches that are decently priced enough. I have passenger and driver side. I also have a very important part, the old Fairlady Z to go right on the front, which I'm excited for. So we have that. We got the clock bracket as well that goes on the interior. And then we also have a bunch of stickers from Calvin. So let's see, we got a 300ZX, Calvin's Garage. We even got Z-Spec. Man, all you car guys know, I love the stickers, man. But yeah, we even got more here. Crazy. But I'm gonna get this stuff installed and I'll show you what it looks like. But our front bumper is coming together slowly. We need to get those turn signals and get the thing painted, of course, and then it'll be ready. But here I am buying cosmetic stuff when the car is still not on the road. It's all right though. Okay, so these switches are in both sides. All you have to do is just plug them in and then push them down. But let's turn the car on. Hopefully this works. Oh, that is amazing. Does passenger work? Wow. That is the first time I've ever rolled the windows down. No way. You don't know how excited I am right now. Roll this up. Oh my gosh, it works. No way. I did not expect this to work at all. Okay, now does the lock work? Let's lock it. Oh man, it does. Everything works. That is actually the best mod I've done to this car so far. I'm so excited for that. Okay, the Fairlady Z badge is officially on the front. It is so nice. It's obviously gonna look a lot better whenever the car's painted, but for now it at least covers that little bracket spot. We are going to figure out this coolant temp gauge issue. So as of right now, my coolant temp gauge does not work at all. And I had this gauge working last summer, which is also confusing because it's the same wiring and it's not working. So the one thing that I'm going to try right now is bypassing my wiring completely. So I'm going to take a wire from the coolant temp sensor and I'm going to run that over to the dash and I'm going to plug it in. And if that works, then I might just leave it like that. Okay, so I have officially went ahead and I have skipped the wiring that I had previously and I ran a wire straight to that sensor. And it's still not working. Some quick little context here before I keep playing the next clips. I keep mentioning this coolant temp gauge that is not working and I couldn't figure it out. And it's literally one wire from the sensor to the dash. So that's why I was so confused, because it could not have been anything else. It's one wire. The reason that I couldn't figure it out is because the gauge was working. It just wasn't up to temp enough to bring it up onto the scale. So I had no clue the gauge was actually on, but it was working 100%. So it's gonna cut to a clip of me actually moving the car and the gauge works. So there's that. But I do have more issues with the coolant temp on the ECU because I have a different sensor, which I'll explain that I think later in the video. But yeah, my gauge works the entire time. The stupid thing works. As you just saw in the last clip, the car shut off, or I stalled it, one of the two, and then it would not start back up. Now, this is a few days later because I just didn't have time to mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and try and remote tune, but hopefully this thing starts up, and I'm not sure why it didn't. I'm hoping it was just the tune being weird. I don't know. But if I can get this thing started and pulled around to the other side of the house, I can remote tune. And then on top of that, I'd like to go for a drive today. Now, today is 7-Eleven, which means you get a free slushie from 7-Eleven. And I would love to go there in this car. It's like a 5-minute drive, maybe. And this car is torn apart, but I have plenty of time until sundown to get this thing on the road. So hopefully we can make that happen today. That's like the one thing I want to do right now. So let's try and get this thing started and maybe go to 7-Eleven. So the tuner actually figured out my issue, and it has to do with coolant temp. So when I was swapping this car originally, I had an NA, and I bought a coolant temp sensor. I forget from what website it was. I think it was Freed. And essentially it takes the stock coolant temp sensor for the 2J, and it matches the frequencies on the dash on the Nissan so that the stock coolant temp will work. Well, the issue with that is it doesn't work with my ECU now, so I need to either have two sensors or I need to swap it out and just not use the one on the dash. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is trying to get both of them to work. So I need to buy a Bosch sensor, and then I'm going to go ahead and mount it on my inlet pipe, and that'll need to be welded. It's going to be a pain. So I'm probably gonna have to wait at least a week for that, which sucks. But yeah, that's the reason why the car wouldn't start, was because the ECU was showing negative 40 degrees on the coolant temp, and it just fail-safed it and it wouldn't let it start. So kind of at a standstill now, but it gives me time to go ahead and touch everything up and get everything dialed in perfectly before I go for a drive, which honestly I needed that anyways. I need to quit rushing it. But yeah, that's going to be the next step, is to do that, and hopefully we can go get some 7-Eleven at some point, but not today, unfortunately. Really briefly, I want to go ahead and show some progress that I just made with the car. Now, as you'll see, the dash is apart, and the reason for that was I was figuring out my tachometer, which actually works now, and I also figured out my boost issue earlier, so I'm not sure if I addressed that. But my boost gauge was sitting at 0, which I was very suspicious about, and I figured that it was a bad sensor, but it's really not. It's a bad operator. So this is where my coolant, or my boost sensor was, right there, into the turbo housing, which, if you know anything about cars, you know that's wrong, and I should have known that it was wrong, but I didn't. Now, I don't know why I thought I could put it there, because obviously you're not going to see boost on the turbo. You're going to see it in the manifold, which I should have known, but I didn't at the moment. So we're going to tee off this line with this T, this push fitting T, and I'm going to run that into my sensor, and then it'll actually get a boost reading like it's supposed to, and it'll show up on the gauge. Now, I'm also going to show you my working tachometer. So that's going to be it for this video. I realized after editing this video that it is all over the place and it's very sporadic. It makes no sense, but we're making progress, and today I even made more progress. It's slowly going, and you'll have to just bear with me here because I've never done YouTube before. So the next video is 100% going to be a driving video. I will be on the road in that car in the next video. I can't guarantee when that's going to be, but we will be driving that car very soon because I've made some progress from the last clip that you've seen, and we're getting very close. So stay tuned for the first drive, but hopefully it happens soon.